Hi, Rebecca. This week, I'm going to have you help me work on some things we're going to need to do in order to get our data ready to actually analyze. So our data is coming from the CDC's Behavioral Risk Factor Surveillance System, or BRFIS. That data is publicly available, so we can actually download that data on the CDC website. However, we can't just download it and then analyze it. We are going to be combining survey data from multiple years. And so this week you're going to help with basically making sure that there's consistency across the data sets from year to year. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So this is the BRFIS website where we can actually download the data. So if I go to the BRFIS page and I go down on this side, there's a link to annual survey data. And if you click that link, it will take you to this page. You can see this is where all of the data is. It actually dates back quite a bit to 1988. We are going to focus on 2012 through 2021. And so basically what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be downloading the survey data for each year separately. So if you click, for example, the 2012 data, it will take you to this page. There's a bunch of stuff in here, including the code book, which I'll go over in just a moment. But you can actually download the actual raw data in data files here. You're not going to need to do that this week, but there's some things that we need to keep in mind. So, for example, as I download the data from each year, I have to make sure all of the variables match in terms of their variable names and the way that they're coded from year to year in order for me to combine those data sets. Each survey year, there is the actual data, which I just showed you, you can download in the data files down here. When you download that data file, you are going to get basically a bunch of data with a bunch of variables with a bunch of values for that variable. So for example, there might be a variable for sex, and in that data file, that variable might be written out as sex var, VAR, so SEXVAR, that's what that variable name might be in that data file. And if you looked at the values might be something like 0 and 1. Now, you don't know what 0 and 1 mean, and you don't know what sex var means either. So in order to actually understand what we're looking at in our data sets, we have to go to the data dictionary, or in this case what the BRFIS calls the BRFIS codebook. There is a BRFIS codebook that you can download for every year. So the 2012 data has this corresponding BRFIS codebook, which I'm going to click on. And I have uploaded the codebooks for all of the years on Canvas, so you don't need to download these from the BRFIS website. I've already done that for you, and those are available. But essentially what it is it has the actual variable name in the variable file. So that's going to be the SAS variable name. That's if you looked at the data in the data file, this is what the state variable would be labeled as. It would be labeled as _state. And then you would just see these values. So you would not see like California, Arkansas, that those states would not be written out in the actual values in the data set. What you would see are these values here. So you would just see 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9. You wouldn't actually see these names written out. So you need to know as the researcher, what is the value for 1? In this case, it would be Alabama. What is the value for 2? In this case, it would be Alaska. So our code book, it tells us what the variables are, and it tells us what their codes mean. Let's look at another example of another variable. So maybe I'm interested in looking at race ethnicity. I'm going to Control F here to look for race ethnicity, and I'm going to type that in. And it's going to take me to the demographics variables. There's a few variables for race. I need to go to the correct one. And so I'm going to keep looking through here. until I get to the right one. I'm looking for the race variable that has the race and ethnicity categories. So it should have, for example, white only non-Hispanic, black only non-Hispanic, whatever that race variable is, as well as that ethnicity variable. So I found the variable that I'm interested in. It's going to be this white only non-Hispanic, black only non-Hispanic, other race only non-Hispanic, multiracial non-Hispanic, Hispanic, and then people who don't know. So this is the variable name in my data file. It's this underscore race gr2. And what I would see if I actually had this data opened in my statistical software is I would see values of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 9. And then there also might be some blank ones for missing data. I wouldn't know without my data dictionary what 1 means, or what 2 means, or 3, or 4, or 5, or 9. So I need this code book when I'm going to analyze my data in order to be able to tell, okay, for this race underscore race gr2, this variable is the 5-level race ethnicity category variable, and these are the definitions for the values that I see in that data file. Now, one of the issues with BRFIS data and looking at data from multiple years is that the CDC isn't always consistent with the naming of their variables from year to year, and they're not always consistent in terms of the way that they code these values from year to year. And if I'm going to combine data from multiple years, so for example, from 2012 to 2021, I have to make sure that this variable name is exactly the same. It has to be identical across all the years, or else my software isn't going to recognize it as the same variable, and it won't get collapsed appropriately in terms of combining those data sets. And also, if my values don't match up from year to year, it's possible, for example, that maybe in, I'm going to make this up, but maybe in 2012, 1 was equal to white only non-Hispanic, and let's say, making this up again, let's say in 2013, they switched these, and maybe 1 was black only non-Hispanic, and then 2 was white only non-Hispanic. Well, that would screw up my data if I collapsed all those years and these values meant different things for different years. So we have to make sure that the variable, that SAS variable name, and the actual value for that variable, it has to be the same for every single year of data. So this week, you're going to help me with tracking any discrepancies in the variables that we're going to be including from year to year. So the way that I've set this up in Canvas is I've got all of these BRFIS codebooks downloaded for you. So if you click that link here, you can actually download all of these codebooks from 2012 to 2021. So you're going to use those, and then you're going to use this Excel spreadsheet that I set up. If you click on it, it will take you to this link, and you're going to open that link. And what you're going to see is all of this data that has been set up, and I will go over this data file with you. So the way that this data file is set up is I have a column here for status, so you can record if you've completed looking at those variables for all of those years, or if it's blank, that means it hasn't been started yet. I also have the actual variable, the SAS variable name here, and then the codes that are being used. And then this is broken out by the year. So you'll see this column is for 2021, this column is for 2020, and so on. This keeps going for 2019, 2018, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12. So I have done this race variable for you. So let me walk you through how I did this. So for 2021, I've got all of the variables for that 2021 data that we're going to need to look at. So you can see those in this column here. Let's start with race. To find the race variable, I'm going to go to the 2021 BRFIS codebook. So to do that, I'm going to go, I've already downloaded these for you, but I'm just going to go to the website real quick, and I'll open up that codebook, and I am going to look for that race variable. So I'm going to search race and find the right one based on the responses that I've given you in that data file. All right, and now I found that race variable. I want the one that has both the race and ethnicity groups. So it's going to be this white only non-Hispanic. I know that's going to be 1. The 2 will be black only non-Hispanic. 3 will be American Indian, Alaskan Native only non-Hispanic, and so on. And then this SAS variable, that is the variable name that I'm looking for. So I see it's underscore all caps race, R-A-C-E. So I'm going to go back to my code book and then put in that SAS variable name, that underscore RACE, and then I'm going to input the values. So again, what 1 is going to be white only non-Hispanic, 2 black only non-Hispanic, and so on. And so I'm going to basically type in what those values are. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to need to see if in 2020 that matches up as well. So I'm just going to go back to the website and go to the code book real quickly. And I'm going to search for that variable, underscore race. And when I do that, it gets me to this same SAS variable. Now I can see that the SAS variable name is exactly the same. So that's great. And looking at these values, it looks like these are exactly the same as the 2021 data. So I will then put in that variable name for 2020. It's that underscore all caps race, and then it's got these same values here. So I did this for the code books for 21, 20, 19, 18, 17, 16, and they all looked consistent across the years until I got to 2012. And when I got to 2012, what I saw was that they don't name that race variable, they don't name it the same way in 2012. So I've highlighted this cell here. You can just highlight the cell if you notice a discrepancy. And then I also included a note for myself here. So I said complete, see different variable name for 2012. What this is telling me is that later on when I go to compile and combine all of the survey data from all of those individual years, I am going to need to fix this race variable name for my 2012 data. So for my 2012 data, I'm going to need to rename this underscore race GR2 variable. I'm going to need to rename that as underscore race so it matches with all the other variables from the race variables from the different years. So this is super important because we have to identify any of these differences now so I can fix the data before I combine all that data. So I've done this for the variables that are labeled complete. So you don't need to worry about those, but I would like you to work on the other ones that aren't complete. So you'll work on the employment variable, the stop smoking variable, so whether someone tried to quit smoking or not, the education variable, the income variable, the sex variable, the marital status variable, the age variable, the health insurance variable, and the smoking status variable. As you go through and you find differences, if they exist among the different years, again, please highlight those. You can actually just click, there's a little bucket here. So if you click a cell, you can highlight it by clicking that button, and that will indicate that it looks different from the other years. As you're going through the code books, you'll notice that sometimes there's more than one variable in there for a certain measure. So for example, income, if you look at income for 2021, you can see that these are all the values that I have in that Excel sheet with the categories here. You should be able to find the income variable, for example, in like 2020, it should have those same categories as well. So if I do a quick search for income, I can see those here, and it looks like they've labeled income a little bit differently. Let's make sure that's the right variable. Yeah. So based on this, it looks like they've actually labeled the income variable as income 2, which is different from this income 3. So if I were to then go on to 2020, I would type this in as income 2, and I would highlight that it's different, and I would put a note here that it's different from this variable. So that's what you'll be working on this week. Basically, you're just going to be looking across the code books from year to year. You'll be looking for any differences among those variables in that Excel documents. If you aren't sure what to do or you're confused by a specific variable or something in the code book, please reach out to me. I'm happy to meet with you. I'm happy to respond via email. We will meet on Tuesday, so that will also be an opportunity to ask any questions that come up. I know this is probably your first time working with a data code book, so don't be intimidated. And remember, I am here to support you and help you learn how to get comfortable with using a data code book.